Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining and welcome back. Our guest today is Nicholas Tartaglia. Nick is the founder of the former New Gen Mindset podcast focused on wealth and sovereignty. He is also a micro analyst and behavioral economist. One of his books is called The Intelligent Millennial. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Cheers, man. Happy to see you again.
Yeah, really happy to see you. You also sent me a book, the Millennial Economics here.
Correct.
I have yet to read it because I just got in the mail the other day. But I'm really excited to read through it. What does this book offer to the millennials?
So this is basically my second book, which I wrote during COVID. The premise of the book is basically to reconstruct the idea of what a Homo economicus is, which is a traditional idea that humans are economic agents, but that are rational and perfect. It's a flawed assumption that applies to much of the institutions we now see today, whether we think of Keynesian economics, central banks, political economics. The way they think about their models is humans are perfect and rational, but it's flawed. The only way for them to model anything, whether it's a central bank or the treasury or whatever it is, for them to apply these models in the economy is for them to make these basic irrational conclusions that humans are perfect, when in reality, humans are dynamic and fluid and always changing. So the premise of my book is really for me to reconstruct the ideas of Austrian economics and continue the work by making people understand that reality life is basically an economic game. And what are the parameters around individuals or society that can allow them to understand the duality of living their life while also looking at it from a lens, an economic lens. And through this lens, they can optimize their action and optimize their life. And this is where we can find then through these behaviors, we can find a more sustainable society, more sustainable individuals, and actually abide by free market ideologies rather than keep centralizing the societies, which is why gold and silver is doing what it's doing because we keep centralizing ourselves.
Absolutely. In the book, what is your most, I guess, what is the most thing that stands out in the book after writing the everything and I'll have a chance to read through it this week, but what stands out in this book that will hit someone in the face and say, "Wow, I did not know that," or that's beneficial?
I think what's going to slap people in the face really is the fact that people don't understand the the impact of economics in their life. People think that economics is some mere science or social science created by man, but it's not. Everything you do, everything you look at in nature is a byproduct of economic conditions. Economic laws are the very foundation of everything we do. Scarcity, that's an economic law. The way we go, the input output, that's a basis of economics. How we consume, how we produce, how we allocate resources. That's all economics. How you go to war, how you manage resources, how you run a business. All these things are foundational based off economics. So the idea
Right.
is basically to kind of open up the eyes and say, look at things purely through economics, even psychology. I always argue that psychology is a flawed science because it only takes a half of the equation. How can you truly understand human behavior if you don't understand the laws and the conditions that surround human behavior? So economics is that force. Going back to Adam Smith, the wealth of nations, the invisible hand. The premise is what are the economic forces that are beyond us that dictate how we must operate to live the life we want?
Hello, my fellow silver and gold stacker. I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching the channel. Subscribe, please like the video, and also hit the notification bell. Keep stacking. Absolutely. Now, Nick, how do you, looking at fiat currencies right now and what it means for precious metals investors, how do you look at fiat currencies and like how do you compare it to silver and gold? And what advice would you give to say, here's fiat, this is what it does, this is the cons, and this is silver and gold, here are the pros.
Something I usually refer to, especially for the younger guys, is go check out. There's a series called on YouTube called "The Hidden Secrets of Money" by Mike Maloney. It's a 10
Yeah.
part series. Each episode's 25 minutes. It's a fantastic series. A lot of the guys that you host are in that series. Rick Rule, Ronnie Stoffel, Jim Grant. The names go on. But the point of the series is really to make you understand that money or the idea of fiat is merely a human construct. We take paper or some sort of tool and we allocate it a value, but it's mainly there to substitute real money, which is gold and silver and other commodities. Um, And we've kind of forgotten that. So the idea is people need to understand is there's a foundation to wealth in this world, a foundation to a central bank, a foundation to a sovereignty of a nation or to a currency. Is the basis of that is a hard asset. And it typically is gold, silver, housing, or other commodities. But usually gold, silver is the, or gold at least is the basis of that fiat. And whenever the society finds its way off of that duality or that relationship,
Right.
that's when they tend to destroy the currency. As we did, America since the early 1970s when Nixon went off the gold standard, officially taking off the whole rest of the world off of it. What happened? The world has inflated, 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 and now is merely a game of inflating the economies to kind of hide away from the fundamental problems we have, which was only permitted because we've allowed government to spend and do with the money supply as they wish because they have nothing to ground it in reality, which is why we need gold.
What's your biggest concern right now, Nick? Like, look, either whether it's geopolitical, financial, what are you looking at right now that's whether it's scaring you or what do you have your eye on?
I think,
Yeah.
I think it's really the geopolitical issues we're having. Something that's been clearly made obvious now is Trump no longer has control on the international stage as he claimed to have before winning the election. So the whole premise was Trump would be this peace guy that would come in as a pillar and bring tranquility to global conflict. Clearly, Israel and Hamas, he brought a ceasefire, that went right back at it. Then you have Iran and Israel that escalated. He brought a ceasefire, which the following day went right back at it. The only ceasefire he brought, some sort of tranquility to was the conflict with Pakistan and India, but that was very short-lived. But the thing is, I don't see him having the power he has on an international scale he does anymore, because if I'm thinking of this from like a chessboard game, or I'm thinking of this from game theory standpoint, if all the most volatile pieces on the board are starting to move, other foreign nations and sovereign nations have to start considering what their move is going to be, or else they're going to be left behind. So I think that you're starting to see this ripple effect where other nations are deciding to make moves because they don't have a choice to make it, or else they will be dead last. And you don't want to be last in an environment where you have powerful nations like Russia, China, USA, and now the Middle East cohort of Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis all kind of gang in together. So I think for me, it's geopolitics is still at the forefront of this issue. Even though spending is an issue, I think spending will continue to be reinforced for the geopolitical environment. No nation is going to decrease spending or allow deflationary forces
Right.
while being in this chaotic environment where you need to spend money for more military, you need to be adaptive and flexible, and a deflationary environment is not permissible for a nation. Because if they do that, they just wouldn't have the flexibility to go into conflict and spend the money they need to. So I think that inflation is absolutely a force coming our way again. But geopolitically is really at the forefront of my kind of lens because of the fact that Trump does not have the control he thought he did. And you're seeing it now in the last couple months.
And now a message from our sponsor, Juggernaut Exploration.
One of the more exciting ones, I think, is Juggernaut. I know some people say, well, lightning can't strike twice, and but look, I think one of the things you got to reflect on is that some of the guys who work here at Juggernaut are some of the same geologists that basically found and have now advanced sherbet at Goliath, okay, over the past years. So they have a very different way of thinking about exploration in the Golden Triangle than most other geologists, okay? And they've gone out and they've identified what could be another sherbet type target here. And the size of these veins is absolutely jaw-dropping. My hunch is these guys are onto something pretty special.
The link in the description is right below for Juggernaut Exploration. Now back to the episode. Absolutely. And I was at the pool the other day, and this older guy told me we were talking about politics, and he said it's a multipolar world now where you don't just have United States being the dominant global power, even though they are the global power for military and so on, but there's also different players like China, Russia, so on and so forth. So it is a multipolar world. And I wanted to ask you, Nick, for everything that's happening, especially with all these geopolitical issues, do you see United States coming to the end of its, global dominance? Is it currently in those stages, or does it still have time to keep going, like the next 50 or 100 years or whatever it is?
So typically, traditional people always had this kind of idea that it was the East versus the West. Clearly, that's no longer the real idea because now you have, like you're saying, much more bipolar of the world. You have more of this dichotomy where you have China, that's one major force. You have USA, another major force. You have Europe through the EU, and then you have the Middle East kind of growing. Africa is kind of dead last, Latin America even further. Now, in this environment, um, sorry, just pinpoint the question again because I was going with somewhere with
Yeah,
this.
with a multipolar world, is it just the US that's going to be the one that's
Right.
winning? Yeah, yeah,
Exactly. Okay, so perfect. So exactly, back to my point was because you have all these dichotomies, this very multipolar world now. I do not think that America will be the king anymore. That's kind of been solidified, especially since China can hold its own, and the Asian economies are really growing and coming together as a force. So is
right.
BRICS, and BRICS is going to have a detrimental impact on the global economy. USA's power was the fact that he had Europe and other major global institutions to kind of back them. But now that even within the West, you're seeing this fracturization where you have the euro versus the US, when before it was meant to be the US and the EU together, and they're fracturing. So the position the US had, I don't think it's there anymore. And I do not think that their hold on other economies dependent on commodities is what it was in the past. Things are changing at a much faster rate. They don't have the leverage they did. The only thing that keeps them in power is the fact that the rest of the world needs the dollar. But once you
Yeah.
eliminate that, and that's the thing is the BRICS is working on alternative solutions. The EU is fast tracking, and they finally admitted it this year that with all the conflict going on with the US, they have to fast track their independence and the utility of the euro. So just these, but although given granted from a reserve standpoint, as of last year, officially gold was has beaten the euro. So now gold is probably the second best reserve in the world after the US dollar. But still, granted, the only thing is because the global economy has spent the last 70 plus years, 100 years, built off of the US economy. So the US is not going to be king. It's going to be a powerhouse, but it will not remain the king on the global
Yeah.
economy.
No, you absolutely nailed it, Nick. And before you go, I really want people to connect with you. I'm going to put your links in the description below. Where can people find you? What's the easiest place to get to you?
So you can find me on Substack at Nick Tartaglia's Macro Insights Report, Twitter at Imperium Mine, and on Instagram at Nick Tartaglia.
Yeah, you know what, Nick? It's such a huge pleasure having you come down to speak to the silver, the gold, and the investing community. And as the markets develop, and of course, next time we speak, I'll have read your book so we can get, dive deeper into that. But yeah, I'd love to speak with you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Evan.
Talk to you soon.